everybody. I know we've been sitting up here for a while, but we're going to start now. It's great to see you guys. We're here to talk about product market fit. I will start with an intro. Rohini will introduce herself. We'll chat about product market fit and then start thinking if you have any questions, because we'll have a little bit of time at the end as well. So my name is Mallory. I lead community and community-led growth here at Mercury. Mercury is actually my 5th high-growth startup, so I've been lucky enough to see and feel product market fit click a number of times, which has been very fun. I run a program called Mercury Raise. If you haven't heard of it, we have a lovely booth upstairs with some merch for you to take home. And one of the most common conversations I have with founders is about product market fit after fundraising. And it is a really hard one. There's a lot of perspectives on it. There's a lot of it feels a little bit like magic sometimes, and it's really hard to put your finger on. So I am excited to have the conversation today. Rohini, would you like to introduce yourself, and then we can jump in?
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Rohini. I am on the product team at Mercury, so I'm really glad you all are here at Spheres. I'm also an angel investor and advisor, and just like Mallory said, I think product market fit is one of those topics that always get brought up. It's like something that feels, I think Sarah mentioned it in the last session, but it's when you don't have it, you know it for sure, but you don't know what it is or when you're going to get it. And so it's this topic that I feel like there's a lot of feels with it. Mm-hmm. It constantly feels like you're moving this boulder uphill just to get pulled back by that boulder every single day, and building that mechanism for the company to make sure that you're doing the work, making sure that you're moving in a direction that gets closer to product market fit versus running around in circles. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to chat about different areas and concepts of PMF today. The one thing that I just wanted to also highlight maybe as I thought it was a very beautiful metaphor for how it feels to try to achieve product market fit. And it was something that I learned from a friend recently. And it's so when trees are growing, they might be growing on a cliff, and they might be a little bit at a lean, or they might be pelted by wind in one direction, or there might be hail. And what happens is, as they're growing, they build this dense, fibrous stress wood, is what it's called. And so it's a natural kind of reaction to the stressors in their environment, in their natural environment. And I love this concept of stress wood. It's kind of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger type of a thing. But what was interesting was this dichotomy with, there was a story in the 1990s, there was a project called the biosphere, where there's an artificial environment created by scientists, and they grew a lot of plants and trees and shrubs, and the trees grew really fast, really quickly, but then at some point, these trees grew so tall that they crumbled upon themselves because there wasn't any stress wood that they were building from the beginning. And I love this idea of okay, when you're in this artificial kind of element, you don't have the stressors, and so it might look like you have product market fit, but at some point the stressors are actually the thing that keep you resilient over time and allow your business to grow. So I really like that metaphor, and I just wanted to kind of start with that, because I know it is something that even as an early stage product person, as founders, we all have that feeling, and that just the emotional element to it all. And so I just wanted to recognize that, be empathetic to that. And I know this is a topic that resonates with a lot of people because of that emotional connection.
Yeah, it's nice to put a visual to it too, I think, because it is such an amorphous sort of it feels like a made up thing, and so to have a visual or have an example, I think is really great.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I think first conversation we should have is how you know if you're heading toward product market fit. So building that stress wood over time. Are you doing the right things, or like you said at the beginning, are you just kind of moving in circles around it? So let's maybe start with, how do you define product market fit, and how do you figure out if you're moving in the right direction?
Yeah. I think the classic definition is when you are seeing pull from the market that's, the customers are asking for it, they're asking for more, versus you pushing into the market. So it's not about you selling something, it's about customers wanting it. And that's when this product market fit flywheel feels like it's working. Essentially, I guess it's when the costs of acquiring a customer at scale become less than the value that those customers bring to your business. So it's the traditional, typical CAC is less than the LTV. and LTV can be the lifetime value of a customer, can include their revenue and retention and all of that good stuff. So I think those are like the classical definitions of it all. I think the thing that I always react to when I hear these types of definitions of product market fit is like, it feels like it's a binary, 0 or 1. You either don't have it and then you do have it all of a sudden. But I think it's just this consistent evolution, and it's just every day of grind because the product and the market all change. So it's not this one-time thing. It is this continual work that has to happen, this continual relationship with your customers. And so you might start with like a V1 could be what some people call partial product market fit, where you have maybe your first feature. So instead of like a full product suite or full solution, start out with this one feature and find that group of people that love it so much and they really want to have it. And you find this niche of customers and that specific feature that resonates with them. Maybe a good example of this was like, I think Instagram started as this app called Bourbon. Does anyone remember this? And it was like, it had everything. It had like location sharing, it had messaging, it had a bunch of other things. And the only thing anybody wanted to do on that app was photo share. That's it. And so they like distilled it all down to just the photo sharing part. And that just kind of started that flight. They felt the pull at that point because it was just a very simple value prop of like share photos with friends. And so this idea of like distilling things down is a great V1 to make sure that you can have this beachhead to then land and expand. And then the next kind of maybe V2 of product market fit becomes either you're taking that first feature and you're adding more features to it to create this full product or full solution, or you're kind of saying, okay, I found this great market that really loves it. Let me find adjacent markets. And some companies can do both at the same time. It's really hard, but it is the next evolution, why product market fit isn't a one-time thing, because you're constantly evolving the product or the market. And then sometimes things can look like PMF where they're not. So let's say Clubhouse during the pandemic. From the outside, those metrics looked incredible, right? People were coming back to it. There was live sessions, live events that people were spending hours on. Engagement was high. People were talking about it, telling their friends to join Clubhouse. It was like invite only, so there was this other element to it. And but it was in the biosphere. It was in this artificial environment of sorts. And in that time, there wasn't anything else kind of like taking up our time. You know, there wasn't like, oh, I could go do this or I could go do this. We were all at home. And so there were no natural stressors to kind of making sure that that product market fit was true. And so it was a temporary PMF. And so this idea of like things change underneath you at all times, and you have to constantly prove yourself. You have to constantly make sure you maintain that relationship with your customers over and over and over again to make sure that you feel the pull every single day.
Yeah, I think it's, there's product and there's market. Yeah. and you have to have both, and both are moving pieces at the same time. So a similar example is I was at Cameo during COVID, and we had a similar experience where we had these tailwinds of a moving market where suddenly the market shifted and Cameo made so much sense. And it was product market fit. Like, I wouldn't call it fake product market fit because we had fit for a product in that market. And at that point, what you have to do is say, okay, amazing, how do we take advantage of this? But how do we also keep our eyes open and up on that changing market and not get too stuck in assuming the market will stay stagnant?
Totally.
Totally. And a different example is I was at Pinterest as like machine learning was coming up and visual search and things like that. That was another moving market where suddenly, even though we had been developing the platform for quite some time, visual search and the ability for people to search with photos and for us to surface the right visuals at the right time, like catapulted it all of a sudden. And because the market moved to fit under us too. Yeah. And so you see a ton of companies that get formed as a result of a changing market, but then you also see companies where the market moves under them and suddenly they have these sort of incredible spikes. And I think the lesson to take from that is that you can't rest on your laurels there either, right? Because the market will change again. The market is always changing. And so I love pulling those apart and focusing on both of those. And I think the other thing you said that was really interesting is the two kind of ways you can move and expand into product market fit. So either building additional features or moving across markets. Mercury's doing both at once right now.
Sure.
Which is, we call it, I think we can say it, we call it the cosmic cube, where it does create a cube of like multiple versions of expansion at the same time, and it's very hard to coordinate. And so I think your experience there is really interesting for anybody to take a look at as far as how Mercury is doing it right now. Okay, so let's get a little bit more tactical. I think we've been fairly philosophical up until now. We got lots of founders in the room. How do you actually go about pursuing product market fit? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, I think maybe I guess not problem, but like the thing that I see most early stage founders or even early stage PMs fall into, there's like this trap of you kind of get high on your own supply kind of a thing, where you get so excited about your idea or your mission or your own product, and you kind of forget that that's just one half of the equation, and the demand side is so much more important than the supply side of it. And so I think the first thing tactically to do is to understand your customers, or if you're pre-product, your theoretical customers. Who are those prospects? Who are the folks that are in your pitch deck that you said were going to be customers? Really understand what they need and what their problems are. Can you find them? Can you attract their attention? Can you do so scalably and efficiently? Is there money to be made after you do so? There's a bunch of questions around all of this. And so I'd say, like, first, find the hair on fire problem for your customers. Because what you're trying to do is ultimately change behavior. No matter if it's a consumer or B2B business, you have to change somebody's like day-to-day to something else, to use your product, to use your solution. And so it has to be kind of a hair on fire problem, because typically, if it's just that's kind of a problem for me daily, they're probably not going to change their behavior. And so you want something that is truly resonating with them, that truly, even if it's like, hey, I want an app to distract me for 30 seconds, and TikTok kind of fills that. So you just have to understand what that problem is, or what their needs are, and go deep into kind of the customer angle of it. And then I think metrics are also really important here. And I'd say like the typical product market fit metrics are usually determining like, is there organic growth? Is there organic acquisition? Are people just coming in the door without you having to sell them? Are they retaining? Are they coming back day after day? Are they telling their friends? Are they willing to pay for it? And some of you might be saying, okay, I'm way too early for any of these to be real numbers for me, but that's okay. I think you can still have, especially in these early stages, your gut, your intuition is probably right. Mm-hmm. And so if you can even just kind of give yourself a scorecard or a grade, how is retention doing? Are people starting to come back without me having to bug them? Or like, is it just my mom that's being really nice and she's coming back to this app? Like, just kind of like watch yourself month over month and see if things are improving in some of these core kind of like PMFE metrics. And then once you get to a point where you have a core cohort or an early group, then it becomes probably, when I look at like, how do I think about the demand side, then it's probably a 50-50 split. So 50% of the time you are still talking to your customers, getting the qual, because nothing can replace the like real research and interviewing and understanding those customer problems in depth. And then the other 50% is more quantitative. You are doing more testing, you're trying things out, and you want to do that as quickly as possible, because the more you can get the bad ideas that don't resonate down, then the better you can, like the faster you can get to the right ideas. An example of this was actually, we launched at Mercury, we launched Bill Pay last year, which was we have a send money flow for all of our banking customers, and it's really simple, really easy to use. You can send money to anybody. But what we heard from customers was they needed something a little bit more that would handle more complex situations. They would get a bill from a vendor, and they needed to put some additional data in there on that send money. They had to put some notes. They had to have it synced to accounting. And so we launched that, but we didn't see that PMF pull that we wanted to. And so we had a lot of customer interviews from there, and we did a lot of internal tests and just tried out different things. And it was really interesting because it completely crushed our assumptions. It was very humbling, but it was absolutely necessary. And I think it built that resilient stress wood of sorts to make sure that this product is now set up for what I think it will be a long the longevity and success that it needs. But I think the reason I even share this story is PMF is not this like theoretical thing. It is literally just an ongoing conversation with your customers. It is iterating, testing, trying again, iterating, testing, trying. It's not easy. It's not glamorous work, but that's truly what kind of gets you from point A to point B. And I think the companies that do that the fastest, both of those things, typically are the ones that win.
Yeah, I loved a couple of things that you said. One being the make sure it's not just your mom using your. I know you were it was kind of a throwaway comment, but I see a lot of founders who have, they launch their MVP and the people that are around them use it and are like, this is amazing.
Right.
And even if they're not their friends, even if they're just in their network or have some exposure to them online, there is a bias there. Yes. And so I think being really cognizant and low ego about it, of are these people strangers who are using this product and enjoying it, or do these people want to impress me for some reason, or is there something here that is skewing this data? And so I think being really, really thoughtful about the data that you are looking at. Mm-hmm. I think a really valuable thing for founders to do early on is engage with someone who knows how to do user research, because mm-hmm. there is so much bias that comes through in user research when someone does it that doesn't do it professionally. There are very specific ways to ask questions. There are very specific ways to not bias answers. And so I think that can be really useful. Another thing that came to mind was building in public. I think that this idea of exposing the way that you're building and the way that you're thinking about things. You said something about making fewer mistakes, or exposing the sort of incorrect assumptions that you have earlier on. I was at a Series A gaming company before Mercury, and we did the most extreme version of this, which I don't recommend. But we did all of our internal comms on a public Discord server. And there were about 6,000 people in the server watching us work every day, which sounds crazy, and it was crazy. But it did help us avoid a lot of mistakes, because our users would see us working on a wireframe and be like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you do it? And while it was humbling, constantly, every day, it did keep us from making a lot of really expensive mistakes, because that kept us from handing it to the designer, who handed it to the engineer, who shipped the MVP, and then we would find out it was wrong. So what are some signs that you've done it? You've achieved product market fit, you've reached the land of I don't know, product market fit. What does that look like? What does it feel like?
Rainbows and unicorns.
Yeah.
All right. I think we've talked about some of these kind of core signals already, but it is that organic growth is there. And it's not just this trickle effect, but it is kind of the velocity of growth, that you're not pulling, or you're not pushing as much as the pull is happening. And so that is a clear sign of it. I think another clear sign is retention. Customers do keep coming back, and they're finding value in this product. But it's retention at its most pure form. So I think retention with clever tricks or some elaborate hooks might not be the right retention that can tell you if you have PMF. Because I actually talked to a founder who was telling me it was a B2B company, and they were like, we find that once a customer gets to month 4, they get everything. There's just so much complexity in this product that it took them a while to get to that level of oh, I get it. And then once they got to month 4, the retention was incredible. Mm. So they had, promotions that were 3 months long, or incentives that were giving people money or points or whatever it was. But it was only for a limited time, or discounts or whatever. And then just to get them over that hook of to month 4, mm-hmm. over that hump. But if it's something that you have to have the marketing spend in order to keep getting the retention or customers coming back, and you turn off that spigot and then it dies down everything else, then it's probably not product market fit. And then maybe the third, I don't know, this is a second order effect of it, but a good signal would be internally, does the organizational mind shift change at all? Mm-hmm. Our team saying, instead of saying, what should we build next, are they kind of going and saying, how do we keep up with demand? I need more headcount, or I need more help, or I need whatever. It is a good sign that there's growth happening at that point. But I think the thing that I'm going to repeat and sound like a broken record on is it isn't just this one moment and one time thing. And so there's this constant evolution that's happening, because even when you have these signals, the market is changing under you. Mm-hmm. New competitors are coming up. what was like a differentiator for a customer yesterday is the table stakes today. And so the customer expectations change at like a crazy level at this point. And so you need to just keep up with things. I talked to an investor who recently, we were chatting about AI products and tools. And she kind of described it as like, oh, when I see these numbers, I think of them as ERR instead of ARR. It's like, what is that? Expected revenue? And she was like, experimental revenue. Because, I mean, we do this too at Mercury. We have 2 or 3 products that kind of do the same thing because it's in our let's just try it budget. And so that's not, like, you can look at these numbers, and I'm sure these companies are looking at their numbers and they're like, we're killing it. This is going to just go up and to the right forevermore. But until there's a moment where, like, that customer has to choose between one of those 3 products that they're trying out, you don't really know if you have that product market fit, because no one's kind of like going up to bat to say, I need this solution. You can take away all the rest, but this one has to stay. And so again, you just have to be so like on top of it at all times. It is this constant grind of just making sure you understand what your customers love about this product, what you're building, and how you're serving them over and over again.
Yeah. A couple of tactical things too. One is the question. So everyone, I'm sure, is familiar with NPS. You can also ask the question, how disappointed would you be if this product went away? It's kind of a classic measure of product market fit, and you want to be somewhere between somewhat and very disappointed. Like, that's where you want to be landing with most of your users. So if you're looking for a literal question to ask, that's a good one. 2 other things I've personally seen as like precursors to like real sustainable product market fit, some of the companies I've been at. One is your users hacking the product to like do other things with it, where they're finding new use cases for it, even if they have to go through all these like weird hoops to do it. Notion comes to mind as an example of that. Pinterest, we had a ton of like strange use cases that were happening. The one I remember is educators that were like hacking the platform early on to plan lessons. And we were like, had no idea that was going to happen. So once you start seeing people going through the effort to do even more with your platform, that's a really good signal. And then the other thing is like, things should be breaking. Like, if things aren't breaking, you don't have product market fit, because there's not enough pull on you. Like, every time I've seen it is always around the moment where everyone's like, oh my God, there's no way we're going to make it through this. Because you really do have to shift exactly what you said. You start to notice an internal shift at the company of like, okay, wait, hang on. Like, we were really focused over here, but suddenly there's all these people that need this one additional feature from us in order to stay. And they really love us, but without this feature, they're not going to stay, or whatever it might be. And it starts to feel a little bit more iterative on what you have versus what else do we need to get to that sensation. Those are the things that I've sort of observed. Okay. Do you have any closing thoughts or advice? And I want to leave, I think we'll have 2 to 3 minutes of questions.
All right. Yes, so product market fit just feels like the beginning. I know there's a lot that goes on in just the beginning, but I kind of like this framework. I feel like we all talk about PMF, and it's always about product market fit, and everyone says product market fit over and over and over again. But the framing that I've always used in my head about building products has been product, market, business model, channel fit.
Rolls right off the tongue.
It's a good one. It's like, you have to have the product that fits you have to have a solution that fits for a specific audience, but you have to be able to reach that audience in an efficient way, meaning like you have to go through the right channels and do so without paying too much. And then you have to have that be an effective message too, that captures their attention and draws them in. And then you have to have the model, the pricing that has to work for them. They have to want to like, okay, I could pay for that, or I'm okay with that being a subscription, or I'm okay with that being more volume-based or whatever. And so all of these pieces have to fit together. And there's 4 variables, and then the market's shifting right under you, and things change every single day, and it is a beast of a problem. And so it is, I do understand why, like, it feels hard. It is hard. There's nothing that's just like, you wake up and tomorrow you'll get product market fit. But I think it's just this kind of like recognition that it is this ever-evolving, ever-changing thing that is just kind of a constant battle to be faced. And so, I think it's like build the right habits to make sure that you have like the mechanisms to understand when pull is happening so that you can move towards that and let the market kind of sway you in the right direction. Stay close to your customers. That is so important. Stay super obsessed with their problems, not yours, theirs, and like really focus on what they're not telling you. To that same point, everyone's really nice in interviews, but you need to understand what they're not telling you. Read between the lines, understand what their day-to-day really is like. And hopefully with all of that, you can start building your own stress woods to grow big trees of businesses. I'm going to just stop using that metaphor now, but.
Yeah, I think my only add would be maybe if we want to make that equation even longer, I would add magic, luck, and intuition. I think there's a lot of just like as strange as product market fit feels, that's because there is a little bit of like universal whatever in it too. It's like maybe things shift in your direction, maybe things don't. Maybe you hire this one person who like turns out to be, you know, or you get that customer because you ran into them into that coffee shop, and like that's also why I'm addicted to this process, you know, because there is something kind of unexplainable about it as well. So I think the most successful founders I've ever known do lean into that too, and really chasing that kind of magic and that luck and making yourself available for it. So, you know, I think we can control as much as we can control. But
I love that.
We can't always control everything. So with that, I think we can open up the floor for a question or two. Celeste has the mic, so he's closest to you.
Thank you both. This was great. You talked about how you can't just develop product just with your own vision, that you also the other side of the equation. And it makes me think about Henry Ford when he's like, if I asked customers what they wanted, they would say faster horses.
Right.
And so when you're trying to really push the boundary of like what customers are experiencing or, you know, what you're trying to create, how do you do that and stay true to your vision, but also incorporate what customers need?
Totally.
Thank you.
I think there are definitely examples, and I feel like everyone goes to the Steve Jobs example of like, yes, there are times where there is a creative force out there that can see the future that none of us can. And so I will put a little asterisk on that and say, sure, if you are one of those innovators, please
Thank you for being here.
Yes,
you are.
Please build that thing that's next. But I think that most of us, we're trying to find what that real problem is. And the way, to Mallory's point, when you are asking customers what they need, you're a lot of people that I'll shadow PMs or, you know, talk to founders, and they literally just ask, what is it that you need? And they're not getting into the mindset of that customer. What are they doing all day? What is the thing that is most painful in their day? So you're not giving the burden to the customer and saying, tell me what you need and I'll just go build it. You are trying to understand what is it that is influencing their daily lives. Then you can then take that to be the creative force to build the thing. So it's not just about like, okay, if I talk to a customer, I just want a faster horse, because that's all they could think about. But their problem is they need to get to point A to point B, and a horse is going to like need some rest halfway through. Mm-hmm. And so really understand what that problem is, and what, you know, how much is speed important, how much is the just making sure that the confidence of getting from A to B, all of those things, how important are those things? And you frame it in this problem way versus the solution.
Yeah, I think I would just add that you are thinking about this problem a lot more than most people are. And so leaning into your macro observations and pattern matching is your superpower in this research, where you're the only one having all these specific conversations. And so it's your job as the founder to blend them all together and learn something from them and then create something out of those learnings. And I think sometimes we forget that having that macro view of a very specific space, like you very well may be the only person in the world that is thinking about that one thing and pattern matching across. And so like lean into that power too, and be confident in what you're seeing, because even if it feels like it's outside of maybe what everyone else believes, you probably have information that most people don't. So, all right, I think that is, we're 15 seconds over, so I don't want to get in trouble. Thank you all for coming.
You.
It was really great to see you, and see you soon.